A falcon circles the pyramids as the sun ignites the desert. This bird was more than a hunter. It was a key to the ancient Egyptian soul. How did a civilization that built wonders from stone also master the art of training the wild sky? We are about to uncover the lost secrets of history's first falconers. You will learn the sophisticated methods they used to build a partnership with nature's most formidable predators. We will reveal how they captured wild falcons without modern tools and explore the sacred bond that turned these birds into living symbols of a god. What does it take to earn the trust of a creature born to rule the wind? To understand the ancient falconer, you must first look to the heavens. The Egyptians saw their sky god, Horus, not as a distant idea, but as a tangible presence in the form of a falcon. His wings spanned the horizon, and his eyes were the sun and the moon. This was not mere mythology, it was a reality that infused their entire world. A falcon circling overhead was not just a bird, it was a glimpse of the divine, a living piece of the god himself moving effortlessly between the earth and the realm of the gods. This belief was cemented in stone at places like the magnificent Temple of Edfu, a sprawling complex dedicated solely to the worship of Horus. Here, priests performed rituals for a deity depicted as a powerful falcon or as a man with the piercing head of one. This deep, religious reverence transformed the practice of falconry into something far greater than a sport or a hunting method. For a pharaoh, to have a falcon land upon his arm was to receive the endorsement of Horus himself. It was a physical act of connecting with the cosmic order, known as Mot, and a public demonstration that the king held power sanctioned by the gods. The bird was a feathered symbol of royal authority, a direct line to the divine will that governed the universe, so the desire to train these creatures was rooted in a sacred pursuit. How do you approach a being you believe is a god, but the divine is not only found in temples and texts, it is etched into the very walls of tombs, waiting in the dark for thousands of years. In the tomb of Nebamun, a nobleman from ancient Thebes, the walls burst with life. One famous scene shows Nebamun standing in a red boat, gliding through lush marshes. His body is poised, his eyes fixed on a flurry of wings as ducks take flight from the papyrus, and there, on his outstretched hand, is his falcon. The bird is a whirlwind of energy, its talons outstretched, already striking a duck from the sky. This is not a static symbol, it is a snapshot of action, a moment of partnership between man and bird frozen in time. The art tells us this was a real, practiced skill, a cherished pastime of the elite that they wanted to take with them into eternity. Beyond these vivid paintings, we find objects of breathtaking beauty, exquisite pectorals and amulets, crafted from gold and precious stones, were shaped into the form of falcons. These were not simple decorations, worn over the chest close to the heart. They were a physical invocation of Horus' protection, a constant reminder of the divine power their living counterparts represented. The connection becomes even more profound when we look at the falcons themselves. In vast animal cemeteries at sites like Saqqara, archaeologists have uncovered countless mummified falcons. Each carefully wrapped body, placed in its own small coffin or niche, represents a final, sacred offering. These were not pets that died of old age. They were revered beings, raised and maintained by temple priests, deliberately prepared for their journey to the gods. This wealth of evidence, from lively tomb paintings to silent mummified remains, paints an undeniable picture. Falconry was not a rare hobby for a few. It was a thread woven into the fabric of their existence, connecting the thrill of the hunt in the mortal world to the solemn rituals of religion and the hope for life after death. Two birds would have been primary candidates for a pharaoh's royal muse. The first was the lanner falcon, a bird built for the harsh sunlight of the desert fringe. With a pale, sandy back and a distinctive rusty crown, it was a master of low-altitude pursuit, using its agility to weave through papyrus thickets and snatch prey from the ground. This was a versatile hunter, perfectly adapted to the varied landscapes along the river. The second, and perhaps more legendary, was the peregrine falcon. This bird was the undisputed master of the sky, a feathered bolt of lightning. Its power was not in pursuit, but in the stoop, a breathtaking, high-speed dive that could see it plummet from 1,000 feet at speeds that would stun any modern observer. Imagine the sheer force of a peregrine striking a duck in mid-air, a blow delivered with such velocity it was often instantly fatal. These two falcons represented different aspects of the hunt, but both possessed the speed, the lethal precision, and the formidable eyesight that made them living weapons. So why not an eagle with its immense power and size, or a kite, a common sight over the Nile? An eagle's temperament was likely too independent and its needs too great for the close partnership falconry demands. A kite, while agile, was primarily a scavenger, lacking the falcon's pure, noble focus on the hunt. The Egyptians sought a companion that embodied the essence of Horus himself, swift, decisive, and majestic. A lanner or a peregrine was not merely a tool, it was a chosen piece of the divine, a creature whose very nature reflected the power of the king and the god it represented. But to invite a god onto your arm, you first had to capture a piece of the wild sky. This was a delicate and perilous art, far removed from the royal splendor of the finished hunt. Teams of skilled catchers, armed with nothing but nets and immense patience, would venture into the deserts and cliffs where the falcons nested. One method involved laying out large, almost invisible nets across open ground, baited with a live pigeon to lure the keen-eyed hunter into a trap. Another, more targeted approach was the bow net, a spring-loaded device that could snap shut around a bird that came to feed. Yet the most dangerous prize was a fledgling taken directly from the nest. These eyries were perched on the faces of remote, towering cliffs, requiring climbers to scale sheer rock to reach the young birds before they could fly. It was a task that risked a fatal fall for a single, squawking chick. The Egyptians possessed a deep, observational understanding of the falcon's life. They knew a bird captured in its first year of migration, what falconers today call a passage bird, was the ideal candidate. Its hunting instincts were fully formed, yet it was still young enough to adapt to the presence of humans, its wild spirit not yet completely fixed. From our modern perspective, the idea of taking a wild animal for captivity stirs complex feelings, but we must see this through their eyes. For an ancient Egyptian, this was not an act of domination or simple imprisonment. They were selecting a creature for a life of supreme honor. The falcon was being ushered from the harsh uncertainties of the wild into a world of guaranteed care, ritual significance, and sacred purpose. It was entering a partnership, a bond that transformed both the man and the bird, elevating the animal to the status of a living icon. The question shifts from one of ethics to one of belief. Can a cage be a temple if the captive is worshipped? These master trainers remained almost invisible in the official records, their hands guiding the gods, but their names lost to history. They were the true architects of the bond between king and falcon, a specialized class of handlers whose entire lives were dedicated to this one sacred skill. The pharaoh may have been the one to hold the bird aloft in the paintings, but it was these men who made that moment possible. They were likely a unique blend of priest and royal huntsman, individuals who understood the rituals of the temple as deeply as they knew the instincts of a wild hawk. Their knowledge was not written down in scrolls, but passed from teacher to apprentice through generations, a living library of animal behavior. Imagine the depth of their understanding. They had to be masters of avian psychology, learning to read a falcon's slightest body language, the subtle shift of feathers that signaled fear, aggression, or curiosity. They knew that forcing a wild spirit only broke it, and that true partnership was built on a foundation of trust and positive reinforcement. Their expertise extended far beyond the bird itself. They were practical meteorologists, able to predict the wind patterns that a falcon would ride and the weather that would keep game birds grounded. They were trackers with an intimate knowledge of the marshes and deserts, understanding the seasonal movements of ducks and quail. The success of a royal hunt, and by extension the prestige of the king, rested entirely on their unsung shoulders. Their daily life was one of immense patience and quiet observation. A new falcon, fresh from the wild, would be kept in a darkened chamber to calm its fierce heart. The trainer would spend hours simply sitting nearby, allowing the bird to grow accustomed to his presence, his voice, his scent. The first touch was not a glove, but often a feather, gently stroking its legs until it no longer flinched. Food became their primary language. He would offer choice pieces of meat by hand, teaching the falcon that this human was not a threat, but the source of all good things. This was a slow, meticulous dance of mutual respect. How do you convince a creature born to rule the sky to choose to return to you? The answer lay not in domination, but in becoming a predictable and rewarding part of its world. The first encounter between man and falcon was a silent, shadowed affair. A newly captured bird would be brought into a special chamber, a space kept deliberately dark and quiet to soothe its racing heart. This was the beginning of the manning process, a critical period of acclimatization where the wild sky was slowly traded for a human world. The trainer's first tool was not a lure or a glove, but his own patient presence. For hours, he would simply sit near the falcon, motionless and calm. He was not a captor imposing his will, but a quiet part of the new environment. In that stillness, the bird learned the sound of his breathing, the subtle scent of his skin, the quiet rhythm of his voice as he might speak soft, reassuring words. Every instinct in the falcon screamed that this two-legged creature was a threat, a predator to be feared. The trainer's monumental task was to rewrite that deep-seated fear, not through force, but through unwavering calm. He had to become a neutral fixture, then a predictable one, and finally a source of comfort. This was a profound test of patience, a battle fought not with weapons but with stillness. The goal was to build a fragile bridge of trust, ensuring the falcon did not see the hand that fed it as a thing to be feared, but as a part of its new, strange reality. How do you prove to a wild heart that you mean it no harm? You start by offering it the peace of your silence. Trust was built with silence, but it was secured with leather and skill. These ancient artisans created a toolkit of remarkable sophistication, each piece serving a specific purpose in the sacred partnership. The most fundamental items were the jesses, a set of supple leather straps carefully fitted around the bird's legs. These were not shackles, but the primary point of connection, the literal tether between the human world and the wild sky. Made from the finest, most durable leather, they had to be strong enough to withstand the full force of the falcon's launch, yet soft enough not to chafe its powerful legs. Attached to these jesses were the bewits, tiny loops of even softer leather that held a crucial piece of technology, a small bell. Imagine the falcon launching into a dense thicket of papyrus reeds after its quarry. The bird would vanish instantly in the green gloom, but the clear, persistent ringing of that bell would guide the handler straight to it. This was a matter of both control and safety, ensuring a valuable companion was never lost. The most psychologically insightful tool was the hood, a delicate leather cap that gently covered the falcon's eyes. For a creature of such intense visual focus, sight was everything. The sudden, overwhelming stimuli of a bustling courtyard or a crowded boat could send it into a panicked frenzy. The hood, by creating a controlled darkness, calmed the bird's racing heart, allowing it to perch in serene stillness amidst the chaos of the human world. This practice was so effective that it remains a cornerstone of falconry to this very day. While no complete set of ancient Egyptian falconry gear has survived the millennia, we can look to other preserved leather goods, like sandals and chariot reins, to understand their craftsmanship. They worked with linen cords and tanned hides, materials that were both practical and imbued with ritual significance. Every stitch in a jess, every knot securing a bewit, was a testament to their profound understanding of the creature in their care. This was not crude restraint, it was the physical language of a sacred bond, a way to honor the falcon's wild nature while inviting it into a shared purpose. With the falcon calm and accustomed to the glove, the true training could begin. This next stage centered on a single, ingenious tool, the lure. Picture a simple yet effective device, perhaps a pair of bird wings tied together or a piece of meat carefully fastened to the end of a long cord. This was not a trick or a deception, it was an invitation, a promise of a meal that would teach the falcon to associate the trainer's call with the reward of food. The handler would stand at a short distance, the falcon perched on his protected fist, and begin to swing the lure in a wide, compelling arc. The movement was irresistible to a hunter's instincts, triggering a deep-seated drive to chase. The goal was for the falcon to launch from the glove, fly that short distance, and strike the swinging target. When it did, it was immediately allowed to feast on the meat, reinforcing the connection between the action and the prize. This was the heart of their method, a brilliant system of positive reinforcement built entirely on voluntary participation. The Egyptians were not forcing the bird to obey. They were communicating in a language it understood perfectly, the language of reward. They were showing the falcon that cooperation brought the easiest, most reliable meals it would ever find. This approach reveals a startlingly modern grasp of animal psychology, a world away from the brute force one might expect from an ancient civilization. They understood that a partnership built on mutual benefit was far stronger and more reliable than one built on fear. The falcon was not a slave to a human master. It was a willing participant in a hunt, choosing to return to the glove because that was where the reward was guaranteed. The sky was still its kingdom, but the human had become its most reliable hunting partner. How do you motivate a god? You speak to its instincts, and you keep your promises. This perfect balance between hunger and strength was not left to chance. It was a precise science, one of the most guarded secrets in the ancient muse. A falcon would only willingly cooperate, only fly to the lure and then to the hunt, when it was at its exact flying weight. This was the critical tipping point, where the bird was hungry enough to be eager for the reward, yet still possessed the full energy and power needed for a lethal strike. Too heavy, and it would see no reason to work, content to sit idly on its perch. Too light, and it would become weak and listless, a shadow of the formidable hunter it was meant to be. The Egyptian masters had to find this perfect equilibrium without a single modern instrument. They had no digital scales, no calibrated weights. Their tool was something far more subtle, their own honed perception. A trainer's hand would gently feel the bird's breast, assessing the sharpness of the keel bone. When that central ridge was too pronounced, it was a clear sign the falcon was slipping into starvation. When it was too padded with fat, the bird was spoiled and unmotivated, but when the edge was just perceptible beneath a layer of firm muscle, that was the sweet spot. They watched for the subtle cues in its behavior. Was it alert and active, following movements with intense focus? That was the look of a bird ready to fly. Did it sit puffed and lethargic, ignoring the world? That was a bird either overworked or dangerously underweight. This was an empirical art, a daily calibration based on deep, accumulated knowledge of the individual bird in their care. They were not just feeding an animal, They were tuning a living instrument, adjusting its very metabolism to a state of perfect readiness. This nuanced understanding of avian physiology, achieved through nothing but observation and experience, reveals a sophistication that feels almost modern. It proves they saw the falcon not as a simple beast to be commanded, but as a complex partner whose internal state dictated the success of their entire sacred enterprise. The sky awaited, but the decision to fly began with a single, perfectly calculated meal. That perfectly calculated meal set the stage for the most delicate moment in all of training, the first tentative flight. This was the moment of truth, where the careful work of weeks was tested not in a dark chamber, but under the open sky. To bridge the gap between the tethered lure and true freedom, the trainers relied on a simple yet brilliant tool, the creans. Imagine a long, lightweight line, perhaps made of the strongest linen cord, securely attached to the falcon's jesses. This was not a leash meant to hold the bird down, but a safety line, a tangible promise of connection as the falcon took its first real leaps into the air. The trainer would start with just a few paces of distance. He would call the bird, swinging the familiar lure. The falcon, eager and at its perfect flying weight, would launch from the glove, the creans trailing behind it like a slender thread of trust. It would fly that short distance, strike the lure, and be rewarded, learning that even over this new expanse, the partnership held firm. Each day, the trainer would take a few more steps back. 10 paces, then 20, then 50. With every successful flight, the falcon's powerful wing muscles grew stronger, and its confidence in the ritual soared. The creans was a psychological anchor as much as a physical one. For the bird, it was the reassurance that it was still connected to its source of food and safety. For the trainer, it was the only guarantee that his priceless, divinely connected partner would not simply fly off into the blue and never return. This incremental building of distance was a masterstroke of behavioral science. It systematically desensitized the falcon to the growing space between itself and the glove, reinforcing the return as a triumphant habit rather than a reluctant obedience. Every flight on the creans was a whispered conversation, a repeated question and answer. Will you still come back from here? The beating of wings and the tightening of the line was always the reply, yes. But what happened when that final, fragile thread was snipped, and the only thing calling the falcon back was its own choice? The final test of this sacred partnership unfolded in a world of water and reeds. The papyrus marshes of the Nile Delta were a vibrant, chaotic paradise, a stark contrast to the arid desert beyond. Here, the river spread into a labyrinth of channels where tall, green papyrus stalks formed dense, swaying thickets. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and blooming lotus, and alive with a constant chorus of croaking frogs and chirping insects. This was the stage for the ultimate demonstration of the falcon's power. The marshes teemed with life, offering a rich bounty of prey. Flocks of ducks would startle from the water in a thunder of wings, while larger geese honked as they rose from the hidden lagoons. For the elite of ancient Egypt, this was not merely about putting food on the table. It was a grand spectacle, a ritualized performance of skill and divine favor. The environment itself was a perfect arena for the hunt. The open sky above the waterways provided a clear stage, while the dense reeds below created a challenging landscape where a human hunter could easily lose his quarry. This was where the falcon's spectacular stoop became a breathtaking necessity. From a high, circling position, the bird would spot a single duck breaking from cover. It would fold its wings and become a living missile, plummeting in a near vertical dive. The speed was unimaginable, a blur of motion ending in a sharp, decisive strike. In that single violent moment, the years of training, the patient trust building, and the precise weight management all culminated. The falcon did not just retrieve game. It performed an act of celestial precision, a display of raw power that proved the pharaoh's connection to the gods was real. The noble stands perfectly still in his slender papyrus skiff, a silhouette against the shimmering water. His eyes scan the horizon, while on his outstretched, heavily gloved fist, the falcon remains a statue of contained energy, its head hooded in soft leather. The only sound is the gentle lapping of water against the reeds. With a subtle nod from the noble, the falconer reaches forward. His fingers move with practiced delicacy, untying the hood's drawstring and lifting it away. The falcon blinks, its dark, piercing eyes adjusting to the brilliant light. It shakes its head once, a cascade of feathers settling back into place, and takes in the vast expanse of sky. The noble gives his arm a slight, upward toss. The falcon pushes off, its powerful wings beating the air as it climbs in a determined spiral, rising higher and higher until it is a mere speck against the sun. It has reached its waiting-on position, a living kite held by an invisible string of trust, circling patiently as it scans the marshes far below. This was the moment of absolute truth. The noble and his beaters begin their work, rustling the dense papyrus thickets with long poles. A sudden flurry of wings erupts from the reeds as a flock of ducks takes panicked flight. The falcon, 1,000 feet above, sees it all. It needs no command. It fixes on a single bird, tucks its wings tight against its body, and becomes a feathered arrow. The stoop is not merely a dive, it is an act of pure physics, a controlled fall so swift it seems to defy the very air. It plummets, a blur of motion aimed with lethal precision. There are two ways this can end. If the duck is taken in midair, the impact is a concussive blast of force, a single, stunning strike that sends both birds tumbling in a cloud of feathers. But sometimes the falcon chooses a different tactic, especially against larger waterfowl. It will slam into the duck over the water, and instead of releasing, it will bind to its prey, locking its talons in a deadly embrace. The two birds crash into the river in a tremendous splash, a chaotic flurry of wings and water. The falcon uses its grip and wings to keep the duck submerged, holding it down until the struggle ceases. This breathtaking display, whether a clean strike from the sky or a dramatic aquatic struggle, was the ultimate proof of the partnership. Every ounce of patience, every calculated meal, every careful flight on the cranes was for this single, explosive moment. The wild sky had been convinced to hunt for a human hand, and the result was a spectacle of raw nature, expertly directed. The power of the falcon was not a privilege reserved for the pharaoh alone. This sacred art rippled out through the highest levels of Egyptian society, becoming a defining pastime of the elite. Provincial governors, high-ranking priests, and wealthy scribes all sought to emulate the king's divine connection. In the tomb of a man named Nakhet, a simple scribe from Thebes, a vibrant scene captures this perfectly. There are no grand processions here, just an intimate moment of life. Nakhet stands in a papyrus skiff, his family beside him, as his falcon dives toward a flock of ducks. This was not just a depiction of a hobby, it was a statement. To have the skill, the resources, and the sanctioned knowledge to command a creature of Horus was a public declaration of one's status, a way to visibly align oneself with the power and piety of the throne. For these officials, the hunt served a triple purpose. It was thrilling entertainment, a break from administrative duties in the untamed beauty of the marshes. It was also a practical method of putting delicacies like duck and quail on the table, a way to provision a wealthy household directly from the wild. But perhaps most importantly, it was a social performance. Success in the field demonstrated control, not just over a bird, but over a fragment of the natural world, echoing the pharaoh's own role in maintaining cosmic order. The equipment needed, the specialized trainers employed, and the sheer time required represented a significant investment that only the very wealthy could afford. This was not a commoner's pursuit. The evidence from these numerous private tombs reveals a society where falconry was a key marker of class, a sophisticated sport that cemented a man's place in the upper echelons. It shows us that the sky was a stage, and the falcon was the ultimate prop in a drama of power, prestige, and privilege played out just below the level of the gods. But the value of a trained falcon extended far beyond the hunt. While we lack the wall paintings showing falcons in battle, we must ask if their role was truly confined to the marshes. Consider their potential as messengers. We know the Egyptians used homing pigeons for communication, and the logic of employing a faster, more formidable bird is compelling. A falcon, conditioned to fly between two known points, could have carried urgent dispatches across the desert with a speed no human runner could ever match. A small papyrus scroll tied to its leg would be delivered in a fraction of the time, a feathered courier moving between military outposts or royal estates. This remains in the realm of educated speculation, yet it highlights a practical application for their incredible speed and loyalty. The psychological impact of these birds, however, might have been their most potent weapon. Picture an enemy army, a mass of foreign soldiers, glimpsing the silhouette of a falcon circling high above their camp. To them, it was not just a bird. It was the living emblem of Horus, the god of the very king they were challenging. That single, circling dot in the sky was a constant, silent reminder that the gods themselves were watching and that they favored the Egyptian pharaoh. It was a masterstroke of psychological warfare, a way to unsettle an opponent's spirit before a single arrow was ever fired. We see echoes of this tactic in other cultures. The Mongols, centuries later, famously used eagles as symbols of their imperial power to intimidate their foes. The Romans carried standards topped with eagles into battle, believing the bird conveyed the favor of Jupiter. The ancient Egyptians, with their deep, religious connection to the falcon, would have understood this power instinctively. They did not need to train the bird to attack soldiers. Its mere presence, a divine witness to the conflict, was weapon enough. This multifaceted value transforms the falcon from a simple hunting partner into a versatile tool of statecraft. It was a hunter, a potential messenger, and a living standard that could shake the confidence of an entire army. The true mastery was not just in training the bird, but in understanding the profound effect its very presence had on the human heart. Yet even the most spectacular hunt must one day end. A falcon's life, though honored, was finite, and its final journey was as carefully orchestrated as its first flight from the glove. Deep beneath the sands at sites like Saqqara, archaeologists have uncovered something astonishing: entire catacombs dedicated solely to these birds. These are not simple graves, but sprawling underground labyrinths where millions upon millions of mummified falcons were laid to rest. Each carefully wrapped bundle represents a final, sacred offering, a votive gift from a pilgrim or priest seeking the favor of Horus. To purchase one of these mummified birds from a temple vendor and place it in the catacomb was to send a direct, physical prayer to the god, a permanent request for his divine protection or intervention. The sheer scale is overwhelming, a testament to a belief so profound it required the burial of entire generations of sky hunters. This was the ultimate expression of their spiritual significance, a devotion etched not in stone, but in linen and flesh. What does it mean for a civilization to entomb a creature in such unimaginable numbers? It means they saw it not as an animal, but as a direct conduit to the divine. The mummification process itself was a sacred ritual, a meticulous procedure that mirrored the one used for human pharaohs. The bird's body was first carefully washed with palm wine and purified with natron salt, drawing out all moisture to halt decay. Its internal organs were removed, and the hollow cavity was packed with myrrh, sawdust, and linen. Then, the most delicate work began. The falcon's wings were folded back against its body in a serene, dignified pose, and its entire form was wrapped in layer after layer of the finest linen strips. Often, the final touch was a painted cartonnage mask placed over the head, depicting the falcon with the fierce, knowing eyes of Horus, ensuring its identity was clear for all eternity. This was not a casual disposal of a dead hunting partner. This was an act of resurrection. The Egyptians believed that by preserving the physical body so perfectly, they were granting the falcon's spirit, its ba, a permanent vessel to inhabit in the afterlife. They were ensuring this piece of the god would live forever. This funerary devotion powerfully closes the loop on the falcon's entire existence, from the moment it was captured from the wild, through its years of trained partnership in the hunt, to its final resting place in a god's dark tomb. The bird was never merely a bird. Its life was a continuous journey toward divinity. The skilled hands that once trained it to the lure were the same hands that likely prepared it for eternity, a final act of reverence for a companion that had bridged the world of men and the realm of the gods. The mummified falcon, lying in silent millions beneath the desert, is the ultimate answer to our original question. The cage could indeed be a temple because the captive was truly worshipped. Their partnership was not just for a single hunt, but for all of time. That same desert sun would later shine on the castles of medieval Europe, where falconry became the sport of kings in a very different world. While the Egyptians were perfecting their methods for the glory of Horus, Europe was still millennia away from its first stone fortresses. The Egyptians were the undeniable pioneers, discovering the core principles of raptor training over 2,000 years before the practice became chivalric code. The fundamental difference lies at the very heart of their purpose. For the European nobility, a falcon was a powerful status symbol, a mark of aristocracy bound by intricate laws that dictated which social class could fly which bird. An eagle was for an emperor, a peregrine for a duke, and so on down the line. But for the Egyptian, the bird was a living god, a direct link to the cosmic order of Ma'at. Their falconry was not about social hierarchy, it was a sacred act of communion. This profound religious dimension infused every aspect of their practice, setting it worlds apart from the secular pageantry of a medieval hunt. Their equipment, too, reflected this earlier, more focused approach. While a medieval lord might have a falcon adorned with ornate hoods and bells of silver and gold, the Egyptian tools were likely simpler, crafted from practical leather and strong linen cord, designed for function within a spiritual partnership. Yet for all these vast differences in culture and time, the core techniques speak a universal language. Both civilizations, completely independent of one another, arrived at the same essential truths for training a bird of prey. The process of manning, that patient acclimatization to the human presence, was just as critical for a European falconer as it was for an Egyptian priest. The use of the lure to create a positive association with food and the meticulous management of the bird's flying weight, these were the non-negotiable pillars of success in both the Nile Delta and the forests of France. This striking parallel suggests something profound. The Egyptians did not just stumble upon a clever trick, they uncovered a fundamental psychology of partnership with the avian world, a deep, instinctual logic that any culture, anywhere, must follow to earn the trust of the wild sky. They were the first to map this delicate territory of trust and reward, a map that would be rediscovered again and again across the long span of human history. The methods perfected along the Nile did not vanish with the last pharaoh. They traveled, carried along the same routes as spices, gold, and ideas. When Alexander the Great conquered Egypt in the 4th century before the Common Era, he opened a floodgate of cultural exchange. His successors, the Ptolemies, ruled from the magnificent city of Alexandria, a bustling hub where Greek scholars and Egyptian priests lived side by side. In this vibrant, intellectual atmosphere, the sophisticated art of training falcons would have been a fascinating curiosity for the new ruling class. From Alexandria, the knowledge could easily have traveled east with merchants into the heart of the Persian Empire, where falconry was already taking root, and then further along the Silk Road. We cannot trace a single, unbroken chain from an Egyptian trainer to a medieval European lord, but the logic of history points to a slow, inevitable diffusion. The Egyptians were the undeniable source, the first to codify a system of trust and reward that proved universally effective. Their understanding of manning a bird, of using the lure, and of managing a falcon's weight formed the bedrock of the practice, a core set of principles that any subsequent culture would have to discover for itself or learn from another. This makes their legacy not one of specific technique alone, but of foundational philosophy. They demonstrated that a partnership with a wild predator was possible, not through domination, but through mutual respect and a deep reading of instinct. This revolutionary idea, born from the worship of a sky god, would eventually be stripped of its sacred context and repurposed for sport and status across the world. The medieval European falconer, with his elaborate coat of birds for every rank of nobility, was standing on the shoulders of Egyptian pioneers who saw the hunt as a divine conversation. The indelible mark they left is not merely in the history of falconry, but in the broader story of how humanity first learned to collaborate with the animal kingdom, building a bridge of understanding that started in the marshes of the Nile and eventually spanned the globe. The first light of dawn finds him on his knees, the air is cool, and the scent of incense coils upward as he murmurs a prayer to Horus, the great god whose living image is his life's work. His day begins not with a task list, but with a sacred duty. As the sun's edge ignites the horizon, he rises and moves toward the Muse, a shaded, airy enclosure where the falcons are housed. His steps are quiet, his presence a calm constant. He checks each bird in turn, his experienced eyes scanning for any sign of distress. He gently runs a finger along a breastbone, feeling for that perfect balance of muscle and hunger, ensuring each falcon is at its precise flying weight. A bird that feels too sharp is given a slightly larger portion. One that feels soft and padded will have its ration reduced. This is his first and most critical calculation of the day, a silent dialogue conducted through touch and observation. With the morning assessment complete, he turns to the tools of his trade. He takes a set of jesses, the supple leather straps that will soon embrace a falcon's legs. He works beeswax into them with slow, circular motions, softening the leather to prevent any chafing against powerful, scaled feet. He checks the seams, the knots, the tiny bewits that hold the bells. A single point of failure could mean losing a bird worth more than gold. This maintenance is a ritual in itself, a meditation on the partnership he cultivates. Every piece of equipment must be perfect, for it is the physical bond of trust between the human world and the wild sky. The training session begins in the cool of the morning. He selects a young peregrine, a bird still building its confidence. He slips the hood from its head and waits for the bird to orient itself. Then, he raises the lure, swinging it in that wide, hypnotic arc. The falcon's eyes lock on, its body tensing. With a powerful push, it launches from the glove, flying the short distance to strike the swinging wings. It is rewarded immediately with a choice piece of meat. They repeat this dance again and again, the distance slowly increasing. The falcon learns that this ritual, always leads to reward. There is no force, only invitation. The trainer's voice is a low, steady murmur of praise, reinforcing the bond with every successful flight. He is not a master commanding a servant. He is a partner proving his reliability. Later, under the towering sun, he walks the perimeter of the marshes with the head royal huntsman. They speak in low tones, pointing to the water levels, the density of the papyrus, the flight patterns of the ducks. He is not just a bird handler, he is a strategist, reading the land like a map. He advises on where to position the skiffs and how the beaters should move to flush the prey into the perfect aerial corridor for the falcon's stoop. The success of the next royal hunt depends on this planning. His reputation and the king's prestige hinge on this seamless fusion of avian skill and human tactics. As dusk settles, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, he returns to the mews for a final check. He watches the falcons settle on their perches for the night, their fierce spirits calm in the growing dark. His day, a seamless blend of priestly devotion, skilled craftsmanship, and deep animal understanding, is complete. He has calibrated their bodies, honed their instincts, and maintained the sacred tools that connect them. He is the unseen architect of the spectacle, the man who translates divine will into the breathtaking dive of a falcon. In the quiet of the evening, the only sound is the soft rustle of feathers, a peaceful end to a day spent bridging two worlds. Some myths paint a picture of ancient Egyptian falconry as a brutal spectacle, imagining trainers using whips and chains to break the spirit of giant eagles. These sensational stories, however, shatter against the weight of actual evidence. There is no record, in any tomb, painting, or text, of Egyptians using eagles for falconry. The logistics alone make it implausible. An eagle is immensely powerful and independent, a creature far less suited to the close, cooperative partnership the Egyptians perfected. Their choice of the lanner and peregrine falcons was deliberate. These birds were the perfect balance of size, power, and a temperament that could be shaped through trust, not terror. The idea of using such a predator to carry off a child belongs to the realm of fantasy, not the carefully documented reality of their sacred hunt. The real story is far more remarkable because it is true. The evidence we have explored reveals a system built not on cruelty, but on a sophisticated understanding of animal psychology. Think back to the patient manning process, the quiet hours spent earning a bird's calm. Recall the use of the lure, a tool of positive reinforcement where the falcon was always rewarded for its voluntary participation. This was not the breaking of a wild spirit, but an invitation into a symbiotic relationship. The falcon received guaranteed care, protection from predators, and easy meals. The human gained a hunting partner of unparalleled skill and a living link to the divine. This partnership was grounded in a deep, practical respect for the bird's nature. They did not try to change the falcon's fundamental instincts. Instead, they learned its language, channeling its innate desire to hunt into a shared purpose. The meticulous management of its flying weight, the gentle use of the hood to reduce stress, the careful crafting of jesses that would not injure, all of it points to a culture that saw the well-being of the bird as essential to the success of the enterprise. This was a collaboration, a mutualistic bond where both parties benefited. To reduce it to a narrative of domination is to miss the entire point. The Egyptians were not masters lording over a slave. They were willing participants in a dance with the wild, a dance where the falcon always had the freedom to fly away. The greatest testament to their methods is the fact that modern falconry, thousands of years later, still relies on these very same principles of patience, reward, and respect. The ancient Egyptians were not cruel taskmasters. They were the first to discover a profound truth that the trust of a wild heart is not won by force, but earned through unwavering consistency and a shared language of reward. The air above the marshes was a chorus of life, but one sound stood apart from the croaking frogs and rustling reeds. It was the clear, persistent ring of a tiny bell, a sound that meant a falcon was near. Fastened to the bird's leg with a soft leather bewit, This small instrument was a masterstroke of practical design. When a falcon plummeted into a dense papyrus thicket after its prey, it would vanish instantly from sight. The human eye was useless in that tangled green maze, but the ear was not. The constant ringing became an auditory beacon, guiding the handler unerringly to the exact spot where his partner had made its kill. This was a matter of vital necessity, preventing the loss of a priceless and sacred bird, but the bell's purpose extended far beyond the moment of the strike. During training flights, its sound painted an invisible picture in the air for the falconer. Even when the bird circled high overhead, a mere speck against the sun, the changing tone and volume of the bell revealed its position, its direction, and even the speed of its flight. A fading ring meant the bird was moving away. A growing crescendo signaled its return. This simple technology transformed the falconer's experience from one of visual guesswork into one of intimate, auditory connection. He could follow the hunt with his eyes closed, listening to the symphony of the chase. What other sounds completed this ancient dialogue between human and bird? The trainers likely developed a repertoire of distinct calls and whistles, each with a specific meaning. A sharp, short whistle might have been the command to launch from the glove, a signal as clear as a spoken word. A series of longer, melodic notes could have been the call to the lure, a promise of food that cut through the wind. These sounds were not shouted commands, but consistent, reliable signals. The falcon learned to associate each unique auditory pattern with a specific outcome, creating a language of the air that bridged the growing distance between the glove and the sky. This auditory layer reveals a stunning sophistication in their methods. They were not just training a bird to obey, they were building a complex communication system, using sound to coordinate, to reassure, and to call their partner home from the vastness of the wild blue. In the quiet of the modern world, we can almost hear the echo of that lone bell, a tiny, ringing thread of trust that connected the earth to the heavens. That delicate ringing of the bell, the sacred partnership between man and falcon, could not echo forever. The tradition that had defined a civilization for millennia did not vanish overnight. Its decline was a slow, quiet fading, pulled apart by a tangle of historical forces. The most fundamental blow was the fall of the pharaonic dynasties themselves. The world of the pharaohs, with its divine kings who were the living embodiment of Horus, was the very ecosystem that sustained sacred falconry. When that political and spiritual structure crumbled under the weight of foreign invasions, the deepest reason for the practice crumbled with it. A Persian or Greek ruler had no need to prove his lineage to an Egyptian sky god. The falcon was demoted from a living deity to just a bird, a magnificent one, but no longer a direct channel to cosmic power. This spiritual erosion was accelerated by a changing landscape. Over centuries, the very environment that hosted the grand hunts began to recede. Shifts in the Nile's flooding patterns and a gradually drying climate reduced the vast, teeming marshes that were the falcon's primary hunting ground. The papyrus thickets, the ducks, the entire stage for the ritual slowly shrank, making the elaborate spectacle less and less practical to perform. Then came the Romans, the final architects of a new order. They were masters of efficiency and assimilation, but their interests lay in different forms of power and prestige. While they admired Egyptian culture as something ancient and exotic, their own sporting traditions centered on the brutal spectacle of the arena, not the subtle partnership of the marsh. Under Roman rule, Egypt became the empire's breadbasket, its landscape increasingly managed for agricultural output and tax revenue, not for the preservation of a royal pastime reserved for a tiny elite. The knowledge of the trainers, once passed from one generation of priests to the next, found fewer and fewer students. The intricate science of weight management and the patient art of manning a passage falcon became a specialized skill with no royal patron to support it. The sacred mews were abandoned, the leather jesses dried out and crumbled, and the secret language of whistles and calls was forgotten. The tradition did not die in a single, dramatic moment. It faded like a desert sunset, its colors slowly leaching from the sky until only the stars remained. The mummification of falcons continued for a time, a hollow echo of the old devotion, but the living, breathing partnership between a handler and his bird, a partnership that once shook the reeds with the force of a stooping peregrine, had flown away, leaving only silence in its wake. The silence of the catacombs has finally been broken, not by a human voice, but by the language of genetics. Modern science has reached into the tombs with tools the ancient priests could never have conceived, extracting secrets from the very bones of their mummified falcons. Researchers now analyze ancient DNA, piecing together fragmented codes that have lain dormant for thousands of years. This genetic material acts as a time capsule, revealing stunning details about the lives of these sacred birds. One of the most profound discoveries comes from tracing their geographic origins. By comparing the DNA of mummified falcons to the genetic profiles of modern bird populations across Africa and Eurasia, scientists can pinpoint where an individual bird was likely captured. The results are startling. Many of the falcons interred in Egyptian tombs did not hatch along the Nile. Their genetic signatures point to origins hundreds, even thousands of miles away, from the distant eastern Mediterranean coast or the remote deserts of the Sahara. This reveals a sprawling, organized network of acquisition. It was not merely local trappers scouring the cliffs of the Nile Valley. The demand for these divine birds was so immense that it fueled a specialized long-distance trade, with falcons being transported vast distances to meet the spiritual and ceremonial needs of the temples. The DNA also confirms the primary species with scientific certainty. The analyses overwhelmingly identify the Saker falcon and the peregrine falcon as the most common, validating the interpretations made from tomb paintings and artifacts. But the science goes further, uncovering a detail art could never show: stable isotope analysis of the bones and feathers, which can reveal an animal's diet, shows something unexpected. Some of the temple falcons show signs of having eaten a diet consistent with domesticated animals, like grain-fed pigeons. This suggests that certain birds were not just wild-caught hunters, but were raised in captivity by the temple priests themselves. This changes our entire understanding of their operation. The Egyptians were not just masterful trappers and trainers, they were early pioneers of captive breeding, managing the life cycle of a revered species to ensure a steady supply for offerings and perhaps even for the royal muse. Each genetic sequence is a whisper from the past, confirming some of our theories while shattering others. It proves that our investigation is far from over. Every technological advance offers a new lens through which to view this ancient partnership, reminding us that the story of the Egyptian falcon is still being written, one fragile strand of DNA at a time. Could we replicate their sacred partnership using only the tools of the pharaohs, a modern experiment would begin not with a net, but with a profound shift in mindset. Forget steel cages and modern veterinary science. The first challenge would be to find a skilled craftsperson capable of making jesses and hoods from vegetable tanned, leather, and linen cord, using only replicas of ancient awls and needles. The materials themselves would feel different, more organic but less predictable than modern equipment. Then comes the bird, a wild-caught passage falcon, its heart beating with the same untamed rhythm its ancestors knew. Without tranquilizers or safe handling tools, your first task is simply to sit with it in a darkened room, day after day, measuring progress not in days but in the slow, patient blinks of a creature slowly letting go of its fear. Every step would be a lesson in humility. Managing the falcon's weight would become an exercise in intense observation, with no digital scale to provide a precise number. You would have to learn its body by touch alone, feeling the subtle changes in its breast muscle, interpreting the light in its eyes as the true measure of its readiness. The first flight on a long linen creance would be a moment of pure tension, trusting that your knots, tied with ancient techniques, would hold against the full force of the bird's launch. The greatest challenge, however, might be the psychological one. We live in a world of instant results and controlled environments. The ancient Egyptian method demands a surrender to the animal's timeline, a deep, almost meditative patience that modern life rarely cultivates. You would have to unlearn the impulse to control and instead learn to invite, to persuade, and to wait. Any attempt to rush the process would result in a bird that is either terrified or permanently spoiled, proving that their success was not just about technique, but about a philosophical approach to the natural world. To succeed in such an experiment would be to understand, on a visceral level, that these trainers were not just skilled handlers, they were masters of timing, of empathy, and of a forgotten art that viewed patience as the highest form of skill. From the soaring symbol of the god Horus to the patient hands of the trainer in the muse, this was a journey that wove the celestial with the earthly. The Egyptians achieved something extraordinary, a perfect blend of deep spirituality and empirical science. Their methods were not born of superstition, but of a sophisticated, reward-based system that speaks to a modern understanding of animal psychology. They built a profound bond with the falcon, not by breaking its spirit, but by earning its trust through unwavering consistency and mutual respect. This was not a story of domination, but one of collaboration between human and bird. The legacy of the Egyptian falconer is not just in the tombs and artifacts they left behind, it is in the very idea that humanity can forge a partnership with the wild, a concept they mastered thousands of years before anyone else. What do you think is the most incredible part of this ancient story? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of the ancient world.